So Tim Burton's 1989 reinvention of the Cape Crusader made major break at the box office with merchandising and on home video, with releases across many different formats, including a very controversial 4K release 30 years on. So let's delve into all the details, quirks, and insights on the home video history of Batman. So in a summer packed with sequels from Lethal Weapon, to Star Trek, to Ghostbusters, to Indiana Jones, to A Nightmare on Elm Street Beyond, June 23rd, 1989 saw the release of Batman, the most highly anticipated film of the year, which went on to become the highest grossing film in the United States box office at $251 million gross, but at the worldwide box office did get usurped by Indiana Jones The Last Crusade, which grossed about $16 million more than Batman's $411 million take at that worldwide box office. According to an article in the August 1992 issue of Empire magazine, the film apparently earned an additional $150 million in home video rentals and sales, and with a VHS debut of November 15, 1989, this was at the time the fastest turnaround from theatrical debut to home video debut, just under 5 months, which was just entirely unprecedented at the time. They were having midnight releases of the entire thing. You could walk into a store at midnight and buy the tape because so many people were in demand to own this movie. Not just rent it, to purchase it. It was priced, the retail suggested price was about $24.99, but some retailers were selling it from $17.99 to $19.99. So at the time, this was just blowing off shelves and just breaking records over and over and over again. And just the fact of the matter was, in 1989, the marketing for this film was everywhere. Like, you could not escape this bat symbol anywhere in the entire year. To the point where the marketing showed up in things that had nothing to do with Batman whatsoever. Like, Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan was shooting stuff in Times Square when the marketing campaign was going on, and the Batman banner just right in the middle of Times Square. It just etched in the entire film, no matter what. Even the Colts music video for Edie Chow Baby was doing the same thing. Shooting their music video right at the time, in the middle of Times Square, the Batman banner's just there. It's like everywhere you turned, it was there. And so it's no wonder the marketing built up such a major buzz for the entire film that everyone went to see it and wanted to have it on video and all that type of stuff. So really just a major thing on the end of marketing to really build up the fervor of the entire film. And while the Tim Burton directed film was not a perfect film, there's certainly a lot of things that people have levied criticism against it over the years, but it became such a vitally important film to reestablish what Batman was, that much more dark, serious tone that had been much more established in the comics from the 70s and much more further into the 80s with Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, Al Moore's The Killing Joke. Just having those things lay the foundation upon which this film was built upon, but so much so, showed what you could do with established IP, how to mark the whole thing, and gave credibility back to the comic book genre to adapt that into films after the Superman films definitely went on a downward scale from the last couple sequels. This really made a major mark, but what you could do made it much more of a hot type of thing for other studios to grab up different properties. Some of them didn't quite perform nearly as well as this film, but certainly does build a craze that the entire 90s followed on from the entire establishment of what Batman did in '89 here. But talking about the home video history, now this is not nearly as complex as something like the Terminator films I've discussed previously, but there are little things here and there that are very much interesting to certain degrees here, and I was not really aware that Betamax was pervasive until 1996. Like, the last film released on Betamax tape was Mission Impossible. So Batman did get a Betamax release the same time it got a VHS release, again in November of '89, but it was a little bit later that the Laserdisc hit. Now this kind of, apparently I've heard some couple different release dates, but the one I'm kind of following the most tightly on is one released in January of 1990, so just a little bit further on to get the entire manufacturing process going, and this was in widescreen. Now, the entire thing with the original VHS, it was a 4x3 edition, but from everything I've seen, because a lot of people kind of say like, oh, it's 4x3 for a 185 film, it's just an open matte version. I find that's less and less of a case, because even with the Terminator I established, that wasn't the case there. They just cropped off the sides of the widescreen frame, maybe give a little extra headspace in the entire thing, but that's the same thing with Batman. The 4x3 edition on VHS, on the later DVDs, everything I've seen are not open matte. they've just been kind of cropped down to kind of have a little bit, the top and bottom open up a little bit, but you do lose information on the left and right sides of the frame. So interesting thing in that regard. And the entire film had two different audio mixes released in the theaters. They had the regular Dolby stereo release, which had a Matrix surround sound experience, but also the 70mm Dolby 6-track version, which would factor into things much later on down the line. But the original Laserdisc, I was very much interested in the Laserdisc release because it is such a visually dark film. From Roger Pratt's wonderful cinematography weaving together film noir and gothic elements along with Anton Furst's fantastic production design, it does evoke a lot of dark tones overall in the whole thing. So kind of seeing how it might work out on analog video form was kind of suspect to me, but thankfully the Laserdisc does look extremely good. Whether they might have done a little stuff to brighten the image a little bit from the film prints, which some people might have thought of maybe too dark at the time, this time it kind of excels very well. So like I was very impressed that something in '89, where you saw a lot of legway to go to kind of like refine the technology of Laserdisc and the transfers overall, well before you started having THX mastered to releases, this one really came off extremely well. Just like it's a little bit brighter than other transfers after this, but it really kind of resolves very nicely. It's like everything comes off very clearly. It's very sharp to certain degrees. Everything comes off very well. I was very pleased by how this came out, and the packaging of the whole thing looks really nice and clean. It's like it's a nice, simple layout, but it just has a certain elegance about how it's kind of laid out in that regard. So I really applaud what they did with the whole thing to really make it look very good, put it out on widescreen at that time, and does have the Dolby surround matrix track on the whole thing. But the interesting thing is, like, they never reissued it in the United States. It was just this one release, and there was nothing else on Laserdisc for the United States afterwards. The Japanese version, which did get a gatefold version of the entire thing, very nicely done, very tastefully pleasing type of thing. Just went the extra step beyond the US version. Did get a reissue around '95, I believe it was, but just like there was nothing really new about it. It was almost like just like a repackaged reissuing the entire thing. They never went ahead and did kind of like a Dolby AC3 5.1 surround version, because as Batman Returns was the first film released with Dolby Digital 5.1 AC3 surround sound, and all the subsequent ones, Batman Forever and Batman Robin, would get those releases. I think maybe at some point in time they kind of try to milk it a little bit further on Laserdisc with maybe a remastered release with the Dolby Digital remix or something like that, sourced from the 70mm 6-track Dolby stereo mix, but never really happened. So it's kind of interesting, like that was it, and they didn't think about it again. But the one thing the VHS has that the Laserdisc doesn't have is the famous Diet Coke commercial with Michael Goff reprising the role of Alfred, kind of calling ahead, saying there's a man in a black car coming. It's like, oh, this black car will be very difficult to miss. Wonderful little commercial there, and the entire thing of the Warner Bros. Catalog with Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny saying, hey, you can't watch a Warner Bros. Movie without your Warner Bros. Ball cap. So a really nice type of thing that VHS release does have cemented in history. Now, interestingly, in 1998, the film would get a widescreen VHS release, which is just a year after its DVD debut, which did feature anamorphic widescreen and a separate 4x3 edition on the flip side of the disc, along with both versions including a new Dolby Digital 5.1 AC3 surround mix, likely starts from the Dolby 6-track 70mm release. But the interesting thing is, like, compositions aside, there's slightly different versions you're talking about here, because in one shot, there's a little bit of a difference from one version to the next, because in the climax of the film, when Vicky Vale and the Joker are dancing around the cathedral, and Vicky sees Batman passing in the background, she kind of goes into this sort of fox seductress mode with Joker and everything like that to kind of distract him. Oddly, when Vicky Vale's kissing his sleeve and starts picking some lint out of her mouth, that footage is not in the widescreen version, it's only in the 4x3 version. The widescreen version reuses some footage from slightly later on, like a couple of seconds later, when Vicky Vale's talking to the Joker, saying, Mr. Joker, I love purple, stuff like that. That same footage is used in place of the lint footage in the widescreen version. Joe Kim Basinger's dialogue removed the entire thing, then played slightly later on, just like a few seconds later, with the dialogue intact. So it's very weird. No one has a reason why this happened for this one little shot in the two slightly different masters for the entire film on this DVD release. But furthermore, beyond the entire thing of composition and that change, they look a little bit different. The 4x3 edition definitely has warmer color tones overall, and certainly appears brighter than the widescreen edition does, which can look a little murky at times, maybe some of the details not quite as distinguished, and certainly the color grade kind of makes some of the skin tones not look quite as natural. So comparing them back and forth, just little subtleties in that regard, but you can definitely tell the difference overall. But interesting enough, that Dolby Digital 5.1 remix is the only English language mix available on the DVD release, so the original Dolby Stereo one from the Laserdisc and the VHS release was not included on the entire thing. But moving up to 2005, we finally got the proper special edition version with a whole box set for Batman, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin on DVD with new bonus features, full behind-the-scenes stuff, interviewing everyone. Tim Burton, Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton, screenwriters, Danny Elfman, composer, everyone involved in the entire thing, top to bottom, inside and out. Everyone gets some mic time in the whole thing to really tell the story of how the film was made and the legacy it left behind. But interesting enough, these all got brand new transfers, brand new stuff. New things struck from HD masters, which apparently would be poured over to the original Blu-ray releases. But the interesting thing is, okay, they still have the same Dolby Digital 5.1 remix, but this now gets a DTS 5.1 mix. And let me tell you, for someone who didn't have a receiver that could decode DTS until recent times and finally getting this DVD release again, checking out that DTS one, man, that thing crackles. Like, oh, this really sounds good. With all the qualities of the entire thing, of the original audio mix and everything like that, this sounds really good. Really impressed. Like, all the little sound effects just have a lot more life to them, just have a lot more sharpness overall, just like they just come out much better overall. It's like the quality of the bitrate and the entire thing, and just the quality of DTS overall, which, like, again, makes you kind of think back why this never got another re-release on Laserdisc beyond that original one with the Dolby Stereo surround thing, and not give it a much punchier soundtrack overall, because DTS and Laserdisc was a hot thing. But I don't think Warner Bros. Ever really exploited that on that regard, but here on DVD, definitely did. I really like this DTS track. This one definitely has the best sound quality, the best dynamics overall, I feel. From just the smallest sound effect to the biggest explosions, the gunfire feels like it jumps out further at you and fills the space much better. And so, with that, comparing over to the brand new transfer of the entire thing, is just another step forward. It's a little better clarity, better compression quality overall, and the color grade here is a lot more nuanced overall. It's not just warmer or colder, there's a lot more variations of the tones used throughout the entire film. So, like, everything just kind of looks much, much better. It's much more refined quality overall. Still not the most high-end type of thing you possibly could get on the format, but still look very, very good. Very good marks in the entire thing overall, and just having the bonus material, the commentary tracks, all the different things you have in the whole thing, it was just a must-have. Because I don't think I ever really owned the original DVD release at first. I kind of rented it a couple times, but it's like I kind of held on to the VHS until we got bonus features. And this was the whole thing, got the box set, all that type of stuff. And it was just a revelation at that time. Just like, that was just what DVD was just burgeoning with at that time, just making you reveal so much about the history of the films that you absolutely loved. And this hit the nail right on the head of the whole thing. Just absolutely perfect in that regard. But in 2009, for the film's 20th anniversary, it did debut on Blu-ray, along with Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin in a full box set, along with all the same bonus features you had on the special edition DVDs. But now the films are presented in 1080p HD, along with Dolby True HD 5.1 surround sound, and they're all the exact same transfer you had struck from those special edition DVDs. So they're still okay. They're not the best things overall. They're not the sharpest HD transfers you could find, but they were decent for the time. But they were kind of encoded in VC1 encode, which is kind of those early days encode formats that didn't prevail overall. It was kind of dated after a certain point in time. Didn't get the best quality for the compression rates you had, and so it just kind of dated pretty quickly in that regard. And this thing got repackaged in a couple of steelbooks here. They're nothing too consequential. There was an opportunity in 2014 for the 25th anniversary where they were starting to do this kind of short-lived line called the Diamond Luxe Edition line, where they had maybe a little over half a dozen titles in the whole thing, which they didn't really do a whole lot. They maybe did just some new featurettes and documentaries on the entire films, but never did anything like a new remaster or anything like that. So this one just had a brand new featurette produced for it. It was about 20 or so minutes long, which you can find just now on the Warner Bros. Entertainment YouTube channel. You don't even have to buy the edition for it, which is probably well out of print at this point in time. But just like they just repackaged the disc they already had. Oh, there's a second disc with a new featurette and just push it out there as a new thing. It's a nice featurette called The Birth of the Modern Blockbuster. It kind of goes along about the impact of Batman and how it kind of changed how the marketing strategies and stuff like that went along with films of this type and stuff like that. So it's a nice piece of work, but to rebuy the whole thing for one little featurette, maybe it was a little bit more than people would be asking for without a brand new remaster, which brings us up to 2019, the 30th anniversary, where we got the 4K remaster of this, Returns, Forever, and Batman and Robin. And so this is the whole thing where things take a much more in-depth sort of turn to the whole thing, because Warner Bros. Sometimes they knock it out of the park, do like reference quality 4K remasters, and then there's some stuff where it's just controversial. Some things are kind of botched up in some places. So it's very much a hit or miss track record for Warner Brothers on their 4K releases, and this is definitely the one that's fairly controversial. Because as you get a brand new scan, a lot more detail in the whole thing, but the fact is, the color grade gets changed significantly from everything we've seen on home media beforehand. Now it has much more cooler tones, like real heavy blue overtones to a lot of the nighttime sequences. Some of their interior sequences are very heavily saturated with very warm colors. And some places, like, it just looks like it went too far in some cases. Like, some of the skin tones get really, really orangey. And some places like that. So it's a very odd color grade where no one really has any reference for what they used to make this version. Because there's nothing in the press releases that says who oversaw it, who was the colorist on the whole thing, if anyone approved it. There's no word about that. There's no word about a Tim Burton involvement, a Roger Pratt cinematographer involvement, nothing like that. Nothing said in the whole thing in terms of that regard. So you said we remastered them in HDR10, and here they are, and there's no providence for anything what they did in the whole thing, or reference they took from the entire thing, because I do have a friend who did say he saw a 70mm print of the whole thing several years ago, somewhere shortly before the 4K's release, and he said this was not looking anywhere like what the 4Ks looked like. And so, debatable type of things about how the film is supposed to look, because we've been used to one look on home video up to that point, and now it takes an entirely different complexion, which also includes a lot of stuff that feels like they kind of blew out the contrast someplace. Like, some of the highlights are really pushed. Like, they're pushed a little too far, and so you kind of lose some of the details in some places, and even some of the dark areas of the entire screen look really, really dark. Like, some place where you could definitely see like Michael Keaton's face in the Batman costume in some shadowy areas before, now it's almost indiscernible in that regard. So it's a very controversial release in that regard. Now, me finally watching this for the first time, finally getting the 4K for this video, whenever I'm watching a 4K HDR or Dolby Vision grade on my TV, I always turn on expert color settings, which is much more of a warmer tone than what people typically look at films at on their TVs. And so that kind of mitigates some of the blue tone when I'm watching the whole thing. So I can't say that I hated the experience watching, but there's definitely irksome in a lot of different cases. Like, some of the colors just look a little weird to some degrees in that way. I mean, like, some stuff that looks vibrant. Like everything with the Joker, the purple jacket, the yellow, everything, the full vibrance of his entire outfit looks very, very good. And Jack Nicholson's makeup looks very good, even though, like I said, sometimes it can be punched to the point of being a little too bright, and so you lose some of that detail in the face. But a lot of things look pretty good in that regard, but there's just some mixed bag results in the entire thing. And I've even found out some stuff like Library of Congress has some scans of actual film stills that they have of the film, and even some stuff where people have actually scanned portions of the film from 35mm negatives, and they all seem to have similar qualities. Like, there's some points in some of these 35mm scans that do have some little kind of subtle blue qualities to them, but it doesn't quite anywhere look like what it is on the 4K edition, where it's very like heavy stuff, heavy grade in the whole thing, where the film typically had a fairly subdued color palette to the most part in that regard. So it's an interesting thing to kind of look at and examine. Is like, it kind of looks okay, but some places it doesn't look quite so okay. It's just a bit of a dodgy remaster that feels like it needs a little more care and attention put towards it, because New Scan does reveal a lot of nice new details, but some of the color choices, the saturation, the contrast, feels like it just needs a more of a calculated sense behind it. And I looked around trying to find interviews from like second unit director Peter McDonald or Tim Burton or Roger Pratt or various other people. There's no one who really chimed in on the entire thing to comment about what the 4K looked like now. And the other thing involved with this entire 4K release is they did a brand new Dolby Atmos remix, which changed a lot of the sound effects. This is kind of the same thing we had way back in the day when the Terminator got the 5.1 remix and they changed all the sound effects to the whole thing. At least on that special edition MGM DVD, they did include a version of the mono mix. This new remaster only includes this because they have the Dolby Atmos version. They have a downmix version down to Dolby Digital 5.1. And so it's very irksome that there's not even an option to view the 4K with the original audio track. And so they changed all the sound effects because apparently back when they were actually making the film, doing the post-production in the UK, a lot of the people involved in the entire mixing and stuff like that on the film were using very old sound libraries. They weren't able to make new sound effects, new Foley and stuff like that. So everything is very much like 20, 30-year-old libraries of sound effects and gunshots and body hits and explosions, stuff like that. And so it doesn't always sound a little bit antiquated to some people. It didn't quite sound as fresh as it could against other blockbusters of the time. And so there's probably a bit of thing like, well, we wanted to really kind of do that, but we didn't have enough time for it. And the resources we had at the time didn't allow us to actually go ahead and do something new. And so on this Dolby Atmos one, all the stuff has been changed. And again, I went through some stuff trying to find some word from people who worked on the sound mix of the entire film, including Danny Elfman, who did the score for the entire thing, and he's the only one who has anything to say regarding any part of the mix of the film whatsoever. And his thing was like, when we recorded the actual music for the film, the score for it, they had left, right, and center channels. Well, apparently, at the time, they kind of removed the center channel, just took the left and rights, and he didn't like the mix overall in terms of how his music came through in the mix against all the sound effects. He was very much displeased by the entire thing, so even on the actual original soundtrack album, he wasn't entirely pleased with how that worked out as well. So I think much more the remastered version from, I think there was one from La La Land Records, they've done a much more better job in terms of remastering his entire score for the entire film for that release, which I don't think is currently available anywhere in that regard. But there's not even a remote quote from him about this Dolby Atmos mix. It's just about the original theatrical sound mixes. And so there's no one to really comment about who worked on what, who approved what, who even reacted to anything, if anyone went through any kind of checklist with anyone who was involved with the film. And so it's very much a thing like the studio just went off and did these things based on maybe some comments from people here or there about what they thought about the entire original mix, or some hitch they had with the entire process of post-production beforehand. But it doesn't sound like anyone really went in and actually asked Tim Burton what he thought, or Danny Elfman what he thought, or the original sound engineers, or the sound mixers, or the editors, anything like that. Anyone who was involved with the entire process of making the film, there's no documentation officially released from Warner Brothers saying, hey, this is the person who said yes to this, or said no to that. So it's a very interesting thing that's very controversial in that regard to kind of discuss that in the entire way. So I think it was mainly Batman that got the most tinkering with it, just in terms of the Dolby Atmos mix. I think there's some stuff for Returns, but I'll get to that in another point in time to discuss that in its own video. But just the main thing is, it's a dodgy type of thing. It's like, I'm not super annoyed by the effects changes, but I can definitely tell like they don't quite feel right, because they do sound too modern. Because this entire thing with the entire film, like some other people have commented, that the whole film's like, it's got this kind of out of time feel to it. It's like all the production design, the costume design, everything that goes into the look of the film feels like it's taking things from different eras. Like it's got modern technology, but it feels like it has a 1930s, 1940s aesthetic with a lot of different things. So it kind of melds things together to make a timeless quality about it. So it doesn't feel quite as modern, but it also doesn't feel quite antiquated. So it's an interesting type of thing, how they approached making the film feel like it's its own world and its own time period in a certain way. So having kind of more modern sound effects might kind of clash with how you feel about the entire film, but it's fine if they wanted to do a new Dolby Atmos mix with refined and new sound effects, but so give us the old mix. Even put the old, again, the crackling 5.1 DTS mix that I very much praise, even put that on there. Anything that, I don't mind them doing new, as long as they preserve the old. That's the thing, having the new replace the old is when we get the problems here. It's like this thing is now the standard, and that thing doesn't exist anymore in the new version or anything like that. So anyone wants to go get this on 4K or watch it on streaming services or whatnot, you're only going to get the new stuff. You're not going to get the old. You don't even have an option for the old. And that's where the problem begins. And so that's very much the conceit of the whole thing. You replace something that may be controversial. Some people might like it, some people might not like it, but at least have them an option to do which one they want to do. But it is thankful the fact that we do have a lot of different versions that are still available out there. You can go into a secondhand shop, grab the old DVD, grab the old Blu-ray, anything like that. They're produced in mass quantities. They're easy to find. So it's not like it's something that's very, very rare. It's not like some of the old Star Wars mixes where it's like it's only available on some antiquated like Laserdisc format or VHS or something like that, and you have to go scramble around and dig around in weird corners or whatnot to find something and get an old player or whatnot. If you got a 4K player, you can play an old DVD that has the right mix that you want. It's easy to go on the entire thing. So I like having the Laserdisc. I like having the special edition DVD back in my collection because that 5.1 mix, I love the hell out of that thing. It really, really works extremely well. It's like, that's the best version I've heard. So hope I've covered enough for you guys to kind of make a determination about which version of the entire film is kind of most to your liking, which one kind of strikes the right chord. If you've seen the 4K edition, please let me know what your thoughts are about that version, what you feel about the color grade, what you feel about how they handled the Dolby Atmos mix with the new sound effects, stuff like that. So very much like to hear your history with the film, how you grew up with it. If you got that VHS at Christmas 1989 like I did, where my parents didn't allow me to go see it in the theater because they felt it was a little too dark. They let my sister kind of watch the VHS first and allow me to watch it afterwards, stuff like that. So a little checks and balances, but I did end up seeing Batman Returns in the theater in '92, and so I do plan to do a dedicated video on that because apparently there's some interesting things about the Laserdisc pressings for the film that would be interesting to kind of clear up and kind of create a little bit more focus for overall, and talk about some of the similar elements that they had on the 4K as well. So guys, let me know your thoughts on the whole thing. So likes, comments, shares, great things in that regard. Super things featured to contribute anything monetarily to the channel, along with Patreon. So guys, thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.